Are you feeling trapped by VMware's increasing subscription costs? Don't worry. In this video, I'm going to show you how exactly to exit VMware in just 4 simple steps. So stay tuned. Hey everyone, welcome to Giant on Cloud. My name is Giant. Now, when I talk to customers, ranging from small and medium business and sometimes all the way to large enterprise, one of the common challenges that I've been hearing in the field is the increased subscription cost or the licensing cost by Broadcom. So ever since Broadcom acquired VMware way back in 2023, some customers have said that the licensing cost have gone up anywhere between 150% to 1000%. And in some cases it's increased by 1200%. AT&T went on a record saying their licensing costs went up by 1050%. Now, when I double click with customers, when I sit down and have discussions with customers and understand what kind of workloads that they're currently running on VMware, most customers tell me 70 to 80% of their workloads are on Windows workloads. Now, but they're adding complexities in terms of dual licensing because they need to pay VMware for the licensing cost as well, in addition to the Windows licensing cost. Now, in this video, I'm going to kind of break it down and make it really easy for you. Exit VMware into Azure Local in just 4 simple steps. So without further ado, let's get cracking. All right, so let's quickly go over some of the high-level architecture and the various components that are in play when you migrate VMs from vCenter into Azure Local. Now, the tool that we're going to be using in this case is the Azure Migrate tool. So it's the same familiar tool that are familiar to so many customers today, especially those customers who have migrated from on-premises to public Azure. It's the same tool that we're going to be using and leveraging to migrate VMs from vCenter into Azure Local. So as part of the first step, you have the existing VMware vCenter infrastructure that's already running in customers' data center. And then you also have your Azure Local instance running in the customer's data center as well. One thing to keep in mind as part of first step, the user needs to configure the logical network and the storage as well, so that migrated VMs can actually make use of that. And as part of second step, you create an Azure Migrate project from Azure Portal, and you make a note of the source and target keys. And as part of step 3, that's when you start provisioning both source and target appliances with the respective keys that you made a note of in second step. Now, once you have done that, then the source appliance, you go through a step called discovery. So where you start doing a discovery of your existing VMware vCenter inventory. So which means it will discover automatically all the Linux VMs, the Windows client VMs, and also Windows server VMs. So then you, as part of step 5, then you select the respective VMs that you want to migrate to Azure Local instance. So once you select, you click on the migrate, and then it starts migrating from VMware into Azure Local. All right, so what are those 4 magical steps? Those 4 magical steps are, first one, to prepare the environment. So make sure the infrastructure, you have the ports open in the firewall across both VMware and Azure Local instances. And then the second step is to discover and replicate. So which means we're going to start discovering the VMs from vCenter. and then start replicating them, which means basically copying each of these VMs. The third step is to migrate these VMs. So there's going to be obviously cutover. So you start migrating these VMs into Azure Local instance. And the fourth and the most important step is to enable the guest management so that these VMs are visible from Azure, and you can extend all of the Azure constructs into these VMs, just like you would do in case of Arc VMs. So we're going to see each of these steps a little more in detail in the next slide. All right, so as part of the first step, which is basically the preparation, something to keep in mind, there is a list of supported configurations that are very clearly documented. I'm going to leave the link in the comment section as well. But just make sure that you have the vCenter supported versions of vCenter is anywhere between 6.6.5 to 6.7, 7.0, and 8.0. So the one I'm going to be demoing today is the version that is vCenter 8.0. And Azure Local version has to be 23.11 and later. And also there is a list of guest VMs that are supported as well. So keep in mind, there is little tweaking that is required to migrate Windows Server 2008 R2. So I'm going to share that link as well in the comment section. Now, the supported regions, very important one. So supported geographies, as I would call it. This is for storing the metadata collected from source and target appliances. So this can be completely different to the region that you have registered your Azure Local instance. So it does not have to be the same Azure region, right? So you can choose a different region for this. Like I said, this is just for storing the metadata information from both source and the target. So what are the ports that we need to worry about, both in case of vCenter as well as the target appliances? So 33889, which is the RDP port, that is for the source appliance. It's optional, in my opinion, but if you want to do an RDP to the source appliance, you have to enable 3389 in your firewall. Then 44368, which is basically the inbound access to the appliance management application, which I'm going to show you in the demo as well. 443, which is both inbound and outbound communication between the Azure Migrate service, that's public Azure, and vCenter instance. 902, which is both inbound and outbound, which is for the source appliance to replicate the data from the ESXi snapshots. And also it takes care of doing the heartbeat just to make sure vCenter is up and running. 445, which is the inbound and both outbound as well, which is an SMB port, which is used to communicate between the source appliance and the target appliance. And in case of Azure Local, which is the target appliance, you have the same 3389 port, which is the RDP port, the 44368 port, which is to access the appliance management application. Then 445, which is again the same as the case with Azure Local as well. That is the SMB port to communicate between the source and target. Then you have the WinRM communications between the host and the appliance. So these are the ports that we need to be aware of while making as part of the preparation. So as part of the second step, which is discover and replicate. So we're going to first create and configure the VMware source appliance, which is vCenter, and then create and configure the target appliance in Azure Local, and then select the VMs and start replicating. Now, keep in mind, each of these VMs, like I said in the previous slide as well, will have the corresponding versions of the template, which is an OVF template in case of vCenter, and then VHD template in case of Azure Local. So it's very easy to configure. If you choose to ignore these templates and want to use PowerShell, you can choose that option as well. Okay, so the third step is to migrate and verify. So once these VMs have been replicated, you start migrating the VMs, the replicated VMs, and verify, and then complete the migration. And the fourth and the final step is to enable the guest management. So this is to make sure you can extend some of the Azure constructs into these VMs as well. So that is as part of the enablement of guest management, you need to install the guest agent on each migrated VM. So guest agent is also called a mock guest agent. And once you install it, then you enable the guest management. So once you enable this, this will actually install Azure Connected Machine Agent, that is to manage the Azure Local VM extensions on your virtual machine. Okay. All right. So in the next, in the next screen, we're going to see how all of these things are put in action. So we're going to dive into the demo. And before we do that, I just want to quickly recap the magical steps that I told you initially. Step 1 is the preparation step. Step 2 is discover and replicate. And step 3, migrate and complete the migration. And step 4 is to enable the guest management. Now, in the demo, we're going to just quickly dive into the preparation step, which is basically creating the Azure Migrate project and then creating the source and the target appliances. Let's dive in. All right, let's quickly dive into the Azure portal. Go to Azure Migrate service. And once you go there, click on service and database and apps, web apps. As you can see, the project is already created. If you want to create a project, you can just create new and select your subscription, and there you go. Since I've already created the project, let's go to discover option under the migration tools. Okay, click on discover. And once you click on discover, select, you get two options, select Azure Local, and you select the machines that are virtualized, which is vSphere in our case, and name the appliance. So just provide the name of your source appliance and click on generate key. Okay. Just to let you know, so this is already being done, but just showing you how this is done. Okay. You can download, so you get two options. You can download it, download the OVA template, or you can download a zip file where you can actually use PowerShell to deploy the appliance. So let's quickly go into the vCenter. As you can see, this appliance, which is a source appliance, which I downloaded from the Azure Migrate project, has already been deployed. All right. So you can launch a web console into it and dive in. This is the Windows Server 2022. So the appliance is a Windows Server 2022. All right. So just one more thing, very important, is you have to assign a static IP to this, not a DHCP. That's just a good recommendation. So the way you deploy an OVS template is right click on the data center. It's pretty straightforward. And then go ahead and create the source appliance. And also once you've created it, just make a note of the IP address. Very, very important. So this is where the web services will be running. And that's where we're going to launch the web portal with the port number 44368. So provide the IP address of the source appliance with the port number, and you will see this web application launch automatically. So keep in mind, when you created the appliance, we generated the key, and that's the key that we need to key in. Once you key in the key, it gets verified against the Azure Migrate project, and then you log into the Azure portal using the credentials that you used to create the Azure Migrate project. So, like I said, your Azure Migrate project can be in a different region compared to, let's say, your Azure Local instance. So it goes through a quick appliance update and then gets you logged in with your credentials. And the second one is to manage the credentials and discovery. So basically, this is where you're going to put in the vCenter credentials and store those credentials. As you can see, I have provided the vCenter credentials and stored those credentials in this step. That's step number 2. All right. And the next step is to provide the vCenter server details. Now you have stored the credentials. Now you need to provide the endpoints for the vCenter. That's what I've exactly done. So that's vc.locustech.local is the full FQDN of my vCenter, as you can see in the URL. All right. So once you have done that, you don't have to click on Start Discovery, but when you're doing it for the first time, you have to click on Start Discovery. So I'm not going to do that now because it's already been discovered. And then you also need to add the Azure Local instance, which is the FQDN of Azure Local. That's what I've done, onboard to Azure Local. So basically you provide the right credentials for your Azure Local instance, and it gets validated as well with a green tick. Okay, so once you've done that, let's go to Azure Migrate project. And after you click on Discover, then already the servers would have now been discovered. So if you click on, there are 4 servers which have been discovered. So as you can see, all the 4 VMs from vCenter have been inventoried and listed in the Azure Migrate project. So quickly go into the vCenter just to double check if they are indeed 4 VMs. So with this, we have now completed the first step, which is basically the preparation step. That is to deploy the source vCenter. And the next step is to discover and replicate. Just before we do that, just make sure all the discovered servers from vCenter are showing up here and they're accurate. So let's quickly validate that in vCenter as well. As you can see, there are 4 VMs and all 4 VMs are showing up in the Azure Migrate project as discovered inventory. The next step is now to replicate, which is second step, right? So now you select where you want to migrate, what do you want to migrate, which is basically the virtual machines, and select where do you want to migrate, which is the target, Azure Stack HCI or Azure Local, and then the virtualization type, which is VMware vSphere. And now we are at an important step where we need to provision the target appliance. So in this step, you click on download and configure, and select the name of the target appliance, and then click on generate key. And as usual, make a note of this key, very, very important. That's when you would need this key when you log into the web services of this appliance, because it will ask you to key in the key. And then you have an option to download the VHD or zip. So in this case, I've actually downloaded a VHD template. So I'm going to use the VHD template to deploy using the Hyper-V Manager. All right. So pretty straightforward. Right click on the node, create new virtual machine, and select the name of the virtual machine. Keep that as generation 1 because it's not a VHDX, it's VHD. And select the startup memory and so on and so forth, and all the good stuff in terms of the networking. And this is where you're going to browse and select the VHD that you've downloaded in the previous step. Okay, so once you've deployed, as you can see, it's already been deployed here. So it gets assigned. Again, remember, we need to assign a static IP for this. So I've assigned a static IP address. So let's go in and enter this IP address with the port number, which is 44368. And we got to do the same thing which we did for the source appliance, which is to key in the key that we actually generated, validate that using the key, and then log in using the Azure portal credentials where you created the Azure Migrate project. All right, so it's all logged in now. So everything looks green so far. Yeah, like I said, that's the key that we generated for the target appliance. All right. Okay, so now the next step is to enter the Azure Local instance information. So in this case, that's the Azure Local FQDN, which gets validated as well. All right. So once you've made sure of this, then you can come back to this step. Now we have finished the deploying the target appliance, now you can start with replication. So discover and replicate. So we've done the discovery. Now we are doing the replication. All right, so select the subscription, the resource group, and the target system. So in this case, it's the Azure Local cluster is where this VMs are going to be migrated, and automatically picks up the Azure target appliance, which we just created. And then it gives me the inventory of the VMs that I want to migrate. So you can pick and set, choose the VMs that you want to migrate. As you can see, it listed all the 4 VMs from vCenter instance. So I'm going to select the first one, the VMW W2K25 and Ubuntu Desktop 20, because I'm not going to select the VMware source and VMware vCenter server. So click next. And then this is where you provide the target settings. This is where, you want to make sure, you create the right, select the right subscription, the resource group, where you're going to be moving these VMs on. So that means these VMs, once migrated to Azure Local, will be managed in a particular resource group. So that's where you provide all those credentials, all those information. Okay, so just to show you, it does require a few things just to quickly double check, right? So let's go into the Azure portal. Let's go into the Azure Local cluster. As you can see, Azure Local Cluster 01 is the name of the cluster, and go into the logical network. So you see that locustech-lnet is the logical network that I need to pick and choose. So which means that's a prerequisite. I should have created logical network and also the user storage as well. And then you select, in the compute section, it lists both the VMs that we have selected in the previous step, and then it shows the target vCPU. So this is an opportunity for you to even tweak your vCPU and memory, just in case if you need to. So you can modify that in this step as well. But we're going to retain as it is, and select the OS disk. So I don't have any data disk. It's just the OS disk right now. But if you have a data disk, you can select the data disk as well. All right, so dynamic VHDX, and you select whether it's 512 or 4096 bytes. Okay, so select 4096. Same thing here, because it's a VHDX. All right, just review all the information that you keyed in there, and then we are ready to replicate. So click on replicate. Yeah, just make a note that storage account is automatically created. So storage account is required to store the the metadata information from the source and target appliances. Okay. So once you start replicating, so you can go into the overview screen, click on replication just to see the progress of the replication. So as you can see, it started with the initial replication. So which means it's basically copying the data from ESXi snapshots into the target Azure Local target system here. As you can see, migration status, it's still going on. So it takes a while. It depends on the data that you're trying to replicate. If you have additional data disks, it will take more time. So once it's done, you will see the status as delta sync, which means it's being completely replicated. We're going to do right now and change this file and see if the delta changes are reflected once migration happens. So I'm going to open this file, the delta sync file, on the VMW W2K25. I'm going to do the similar thing on the Ubuntu VM as well. Just append it by adding text 123 and save it. So once I have that, so I want to make sure once it's migrated, you have the changes that I've made right now. And once you've done, the next step, the third step, is to migrate and complete migration, right? So let's click on the 2 VMs once they're ready to migrate. So you can choose between 2 options here: shutdown VMs or no shutdown. If you If you select the option, do not shut down, anything that's in the memory, that data will be lost. Something to keep in mind. If you choose the shutdown option, obviously nothing will be lost. So once you click on migrate, you can refresh. As you can see, the migration started already on the Windows VM, and very soon you will see migration for the Ubuntu VM will also start. So these are the various steps that are performed during the migration process. And so as you can click on refresh again, see Ubuntu has started now, right? So if you just click on that, it'll tell you what's happening. So all the steps that are being currently performed. Again, this is going to take some time depending on the delta changes, like I said. So if they're significantly higher, obviously its migration is going to take more time. So after waiting for some more time, if you see the migration is complete, right? And once they're complete, the last step is to complete the migration, which means basically we want to get rid of all the unwanted files and data that is not required. So, and we can just click on complete migration for both VMs. Once it cleans up, then the jobs from here will disappear. As you can see, it's completely done the cleanup, and the jobs would have disappeared. Now, these VMs should have come under the Azure Arc Resource Bridge control plane. So as you can see, go into the Azure local cluster. If you click on virtual machines, those VMs are being shown. As you can see, it clearly says, it's being managed through Arc Resource Bridge, which is the most important part. How beautiful, isn't it? So it just treats like a native Azure VM. Even though this VM was migrated from VMware, now it has become a first-class Azure resource. Now, before we do that, before we can technically call that as a first-class Azure resource, we need to enable the guest management. So as you can see, you can still resize the VMs just like you could do for an Arc VM, right? You could resize either your memory, you can add a disk if you want. Okay, so I'm just going to show you, but I'm not going to change anything. So let's keep the memory as it is. And the next thing is, you can add a disk, like I said. Click on add disk, and you can add a data disk at this point as well to each of the VMs. For example, I'm just showing you for Windows Server 2025. You could do the similar thing for Ubuntu as well. And you can add a network interface. Right now, it just created one NIC, but I can, if I want to, I can just add another NIC as well. All right, so let's click on connect and see what happens. So basically an RDP, it shows an error, right? You have to configure the guest management. And similarly, anything that you do, any Azure constructs, for example, security, all these extensions will not let you do that because you need to enable the guest management. And that's exactly what we're going to do right now, which is the fourth step, which is to enable guest management. Before we do that, we just want to verify whether the delta sync has happened. So let's click on that. Let's click on the file, and you see 123, which I appended for that file, is now reflecting here. So this is on the Ubuntu system. So let's double check. The same is the case with the Windows Server 2025 VM as well. So right click and let's go connect and see the delta sync has been successful. Okay. So we're going to log in, double click on that file. There you go. So 123 has been appended successfully. So all good. So that means no data has been lost. Even the delta sync has happened gracefully. All right, so now the last step is to enable the guest management. Now, during this process, there are actually a two-step process. One is to install the guest agent, okay, and then we need to enable guest management. So what I'm going to do is quickly show you So there are different steps for different generation of VMs. In this case, both VMs happen to be generation 2. So we're going to look at the steps that are required for Gen 2 VMs. So those were for the Gen 1, and this step is for Gen 2. So as you can see, so I'm going to copy this this command. So that will mount an ISO, and then I would install the mock guest agent. It's called mock guest agent. So I'm going to install that as part of the first step. Then I have different command set for Linux VM, but it's the same step, just the commands are different for Linux. So I'm going to show you both. Okay. Before you do that, it's very, very important to see that the VMs are up and running. So both both from an Azure Local perspective and also from the Azure portal as well. So both of them should show the status as running. So we're going to just verify that before we do that. So from the Hyper-V manager, as you can see, both VMs are up and running. So let's quickly check if it's the same case in the Azure portal as well. So as you can see, both VMs are running. Okay. So with that in mind, so we're going to execute the steps, which is basically first step is to install the mock guest agent. So let's quickly check let's copy the commands that are required. It's actually an Azure CLI command. So copy that command and change the parameters according to our environment, which is basically the VM name, the resource group name. And before we do that, we have to log into the Azure CLI. So, type in AZ login and select the account that you're going to use to log in. So this has to be the same account that you used for creating your Azure Migrate project and also your Azure Local clusters. Right. So once you sign in, let's click on Know this app only, and it starts retrieving the subscription. Okay, by default, that's a subscription that I've used for both Azure Local, Azure Local Cluster, and Azure Migrate project as well. So I'm going to use the same subscription and then copy paste the command that I want to install that mock guest agent. So change the VM name. In this case, it's going to be the Windows Server 2025, which is VMW-W2K25. Okay, change the resource group name. Okay, yeah, that's the one. And I have to do the same thing for the Ubuntu system as well. So I'm going to copy the name of the Ubuntu's VM. It's easier to copy and paste. Okay, so I'm doing it for the Windows Server 2025 right now. Change the resource group name to locust check -homelab HL-RG, and then enter. Okay. Yep. As you can see, it succeeded. And do the same thing for the other VM, which is the Ubuntu VM. Okay. Just paste it. Click enter. All right. There you see. There you can see both of them succeeded. Now we have mounted the ISO for the mock guest agent, and now we need to install this. So as you can see, it's mounted as a DVD drive there. Yeah. And we will see for the other VM, which is Windows Server 2025. So both VMs, you have the mock guest agent ISO has been mounted. Now we need to install the mock guest agent. Okay, so let's go into each of these VMs. And so you need to go inside each of these VMs because this is an ISO that's mounted for each of the VMs. So you need to, let's copy the VM, the right command to install the mock guest agent. Yeah, there you go. That's for Linux. And since we're doing it for Windows, let's copy the Windows one. Just copy it and then paste it in the PowerShell inside Windows Server 2025 guest VM. click enter, and this is going to be very fast. Okay, there you go. It is successfully installed. And we're going to do the same thing for the Ubuntu system as well. So open the Ubuntu VM console and log into the Ubuntu VM, okay? And launch the terminal. And this time we need to paste the, yeah, there you go. It has a different command set. So just make sure that make a note of the right command set there. There you go. The mock guest agent has successfully installed on the Ubuntu VM as well. Okay, so we are done installing it, and the next step is to enable guest management. Once you enable guest management, this will actually install the Azure connected machine agent. Okay, so let's do exactly that for using the command Azure Stack CI, AZ Stack CI VM update command. And as you can see, it succeeded for Windows Server 2025. We're going to do the same thing for the Ubuntu as well. So which means we need to enable it. Once we enable, it will automatically install Azure Connected Machine Agent. All right, there you go. Both of them succeeded. With that, we have completed enabling the guest management. So quickly, let's refresh the screen in the Azure portal. As you can see now, the configuration says enabled. So let's quickly check for the Windows Server 2025 as well. There you go. The configuration is enabled. Now let's go and check some of the Azure services, like for example, security. Let's go into security and see if security can be enabled. There you go. It is now a completely an Azure resource. And that's why it's letting me, tie in some of the Azure services as well. I can do connection, I can do configuration. See, it says guest management is enabled. All right, so with that, I have come to the end of this demo. I hope you really enjoyed this demo. Just to quickly recap, we have successfully demonstrated how to migrate the VMs from vCenter, VMware vCenter into Azure Local using the tool Azure Migrate. It's with just 4 simple steps. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.